Alabama 1, Georgia 2. It just seems like it's the way of the SEC. It's always been that way. It is that way currently. And it's just going to result one way or the other to be Alabama on top and Georgia just that far behind. Welcome to the Voice of College Football, SEC. Please lock it in here. We provide content for you each and every day, so please subscribe. Share these videos out on social media, and of course, smash that like button. Okay, the AP and the coaches poll are decidedly in Alabama's favor right now. Both teams, of course, are 5-0, and they're basically playing a different sport right now than everybody else in the country. They are the two juggernauts that are putting together the most impressive results with the most impressive talent and physical display on the field. Of course, if we go back to 2012, that was an epic SEC championship game, and Georgia came on down the field, roaring down the field to take the game and go to the BCS championship game, and Alabama denied them, or a tipped pass, or running out the clock, or a knee on the ground at the 4-yard line. And, of course, Alabama went on to another national championship in 2012. In 2017, Kirby Smart's second season, what a run by the Dogs, all the way to the national championship game, had a 13-point lead in the second half, went to overtime, and, of course, Tua to Devontae Smith, and Alabama pulls it out to win the national championship and take it away from Georgia and leave them stuck in 1980. 2018, just a year later, Georgia had a 2-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter of the SEC championship game, a quasi-national championship game at that point, until we found out a little bit later that Clemson was actually the best team in the country. But Alabama takes it away from Georgia with 3 consecutive touchdowns as Jalen Hurts this time replaces Tua, and Alabama squeezes by Georgia in an epic game. Even last year, not necessarily an epic game, but closer than the final score of 41-24 would indicate. It was a great game until about 10 minutes left to play. Stetson Bennett a little bit too loose with the football. Alabama ran away with a big final quarter in Tuscaloosa. So here we are, and the two teams look as though are on a collision course right now to the SEC championship and maybe a rematch in the college football playoffs or national championship game. Let's size them up. Defensively, they've both been dominant for the most part. Georgia has just been dominant to the nth degree, just been a wrecking crew. From opening night against Clemson, they have basically lived in the opponent's backfield. They are giving up 4 points per game. They are giving up just 177 yards of total offense per game, 3.3 yards per play. Teams typically give up like 6 to 7 yards per play, something in that range. Georgia is giving up 3.3 yards per play. They gave up 1 meaningless touchdown to UAB. That is the only touchdown they've given up this year. They shut out Vanderbilt. They shut out Clemson on offense. They gave up a field goal. They kept them out of the end zone. And, of course, against an Arkansas team. So we throw you the stats, but you really had to see them play Clemson and then see him play Arkansas. Arkansas is a team that physically pushed around on both sides of the ball, Texas and Texas A&M. I know those teams have been disappointing, especially the Aggies, but they're still quality teams with a lot of talent. And Arkansas just, again, dominated the line of scrimmage, controlled the line of scrimmage. Georgia did to Arkansas what they did to Texas and Texas A&M times 10. They just blew up every play. Arkansas could not run its playbook against Georgia. They were that dominating, winning 37-0. At the same time, just a couple hours later, we saw the Alabama Crimson Tide on display against Ole Miss. There was much talk about Lane Kiffin and his offense tearing up the Tide last year in Oxford in a 63-48 game that was tied with about 6 minutes left. Well, this time Alabama was laser-focused and determined to not let that happen again. 28-0 at half. They hold Lane Kiffin to under 300 yards of total offense, the lowest output that a Lane Kiffin team has had at Ole Miss in 14 games. Alabama crushed Ole Miss. So we have two behemoths in the sport. All right, if we size them up again, Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith, and that wave of 5 stars on Georgia are just dominating on defense, laying waste to everybody. Alabama 29th in the nation in defense. They've been very good. Really, the only time that they showed that they have some vulnerabilities was in the second half against Emory Jones and company in the Swamp, which they gave up a 21-3 lead, got pushed around a little bit in the run game, weren't tackling, and almost lost that game 31-29. So there's a vulnerability there that we've not seen with Georgia, that we have seen with Alabama, but they certainly bounce back against a quality Ole Miss team and the Heisman Trophy candidate at that point in Matt Corral. Vidarian Mathis and Will Anderson providing the pass rush for this Alabama Crimson Tide defense. Now let's look at the offense. Georgia's running it down people's throats. They have not had to rely on the passing game, even though they threw it for over 500 yards against UAB in a 56-point barrage. This past week, they were so successful on the ground with their four-headed monster, all 4 and 5 stars, of course, that they only had to throw 11 passes. Stetson Bennett, 7 of 11 for 72 yards against Arkansas. JT Daniels, of course, the starter, a little bit banged up at this point. They've had to go to Stetson Bennett quite a few times. The two have combined for 73% completion percentage, 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. The Georgia wide receiver crew, not in question in regards to talent, certainly entering the season, but in regards to injuries and inexperience. George Pickens is expected back roughly the last 3 to 4 games of the season. All right, Brock Bowers has been a find as the number 3 rated tight end in the country out of California. And he's caught 18 passes to lead the team in 4 touchdowns despite missing the game against Arkansas. Darnell Washington, the 5-star tight end from 2 years ago, he is back. Now let's look at the Alabama offense and Bryce Young. I saw a comparison of his first 5 games against great all-time quarterbacks at Alabama, Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, and Mac Jones. And despite their first 5 games all being stellar, Bryce Young's just eclipsed them by a ton. 73% completion percentage, 17 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Jameson Williams has been a great discovery from Ohio State as a transfer. At 21 yards per catch, he has made game-changing, game-breaking kind of plays. He's got that kind of speed and elusiveness. John Mechie, of course, the leading receiver with 27 catches. Depth in the backfield, of course, but Ryan Robinson is the guy. 36 attempts on the ground against Ole Miss. Ran for 171 yards. He's at 5.2 yards per carry and 6 touchdowns. The offensive side, you'd have to go with Alabama. The defensive side, you'd have to go with Georgia. This would be a daunting 3-game portion of the season. Well, going back to the Arkansas game, 4 games for other teams. Arkansas, now Auburn, Kentucky, and Florida. Maybe Florida can hang with Georgia based on what we saw at the Swamp against Alabama, especially in the second half. While Alabama, of course, goes to Kyle Field to take on Texas A&M this weekend, a game that was circled in the offseason, but erase that one off the ledger because Texas A&M is just not up to this challenge. Alabama, Georgia look to be on a collision course as undefeated teams to the SEC championship game. Who do you believe is better? Not historically, of course. Here in 2021, Bama or Georgia? Pick your team. Right here, the voice of college football, SEC.